woman by the name of Lanisha Bratcher. Now, they say she was eating breakfast at her house, you know, just doing her thing, and she had got a knock on the door. And when she got a knock on the door, there's a bunch of police there rushing in to arrest her because they said they had a warrant for her arrest. Now, she didn't understand, like, what y'all arrested me for? What did I do? You know, I didn't do anything wrong. Well, she found out that her crime was voting in the 2016 presidential election. Now, she faces up to 19 months in prison because she didn't realize that she had actually been stripped of her right to vote. It's saying her lawyer said she's being punished based on a Jim Crow era law that was intended to disenfranchise African Americans. Now, I said Bratcher was on probation at the time after being convicted of assault, and North Carolina law mandates that people convicted of felonies can only vote once they complete their criminal sentences, including probation and parole in its entirety. So he said that the state's policy of banning people convicted of felonies from voting is rooted in the late 19th century effort by, wait a minute, I'm going to tell you who did it, North Carolina Democrats. That's interesting. To limit the voting power of newly enfranchised African Americans as a whole. So in 1898, North Carolina Democratic Party spoke on the need to rescue white people of the East from the curse of Negro domination. This is what the North Carolina Democrats said at the time. It said, since then, North Carolina lawmakers have tweaked the law, but its core, stripping felons from their voting rights while they serve criminal sentences, remain in place. Understand? If you study the history, the Democratic Party has always been against black people. Now, they had this shift in the Democratic Party and allowed black people in, but we've been voting for them for I don't know how long. And what has happened for black people? We haven't gotten nothing. We have gotten criminalized under the crime bill, which was written by Joe Biden, signed by Bill Clinton, Democrats. Things that we've been through at the hands of them. Am I saying Republicans better? No. Why are we having this loyalty to the Democrats? And because of the Democrats, you got a black woman, they got arrested. Now, it said her lawyer noted that the vast majority of the people caught up in the law are African American. The law was meant to target black people, right? They say a law that's intended to racially discriminate against a group is unconstitutional. It said we also know it continues to work that way in modern application in the 2016 election. So her lawyer argued that his goal was to dissuade black voters from going to the polls. He said that can make a big difference in North Carolina, a fiercely political, competitive state expected to play a key role in the 2020 election. They say in Bratcher's case, it seemed to have worked. It said she's not sure if she'll ever vote again, even once she's illegally allowed, even those when she's legally allowed to. She said it seems really dangerous. See, they want to talk about the Republicans are the ones that push voter suppression, and they do. But they learned it first from the Democrats. You understand? See, the Democrats don't want to talk about their history and how they have been extremely oppressive to us. Do you know the Ku Klux Klan? They were Democrats, Dixiecrats. Do you understand that? That's the history of the United States. What happened was the sister, you know, she registered to vote in the primary in March of 2016. And according to electoral records at the time, nobody told her, hey, you can't vote. Nobody told her whatsoever. So she said that later that year, her church had an event where they hosted a dinner and took people to the polls. And said so she went with her mother to vote during early voting period before election day. She said she had no intention to trick nobody. It wasn't being malicious or anything like that. She just wanted to participate in voting. Let's say the statute was designed after the Civil War as a reaction to growing African American political power in the state, said Gary Freeze, a history and African American studies professor. Continued to say white supremacists do not want a reform effort, hence the severe penalty for those who could be proven to be voting with a criminal background. So why don't we ask the Democratic Party of North Carolina, why haven't you changed the law that's been on the books since 1898 that you want to protect white people from African American political power? See, they talk about North Carolina as a state that's going to be very important in the next election. But I believe black people, you need to get motivated and go and approach them and say, you need to remove that law off the books completely, because that is targeting black people. It was meant to target black people to prevent us from having political power in this state. See, these are the things that you got to go challenge. And yes, you go to the Democrats because they were the ones that put that there. This woman was arrested because of what the Democrats done to be racist and white supremacist to black people. I mean, this story is just sickening. You still, do you know this? It's not just this story. They still have Jim Crow era laws on the books. This is just one of them that was just caught. Now, the whole community needs to support Lanisha Bratcher. The whole community. People need to start calling. You need to start calling the Democratic Party headquarters in North Carolina. You need to start calling the state legislature and say, hey, what are you doing for Lanisha Bratcher? What are you going to do about this? Because you know what? You got an election coming up in 2020. And if you want us to even halfway show up, you better fix this, because you're not going to fix it. We're not showing up at all. Now, I know you don't want us to show up because that was a purpose of the law to protect white voters, but you don't want Trump to win again. I get it. You don't. So obviously, if you don't want him to win again, of course, you got to provide some tangibles as well. And that would be a tangible, but not the tangibles, right? It needs to be on the list of things that you need to do. But that one needs to be removed. In any state that has these laws from Jim Crow era to prevent black people from voting, it needs to be challenged. It needs to be talked about. And you need to tell the people today, you need to handle it. I don't care nothing about in the past what they done. You handle it. Because once you start studying the history of the Democrats and African Americans, it is horrible. And the Democrats never wanted to discuss their history. But yet you look at today, look at the people who's running. Not a single black person who came from the continent of Africa and who was a enslaved African here and who has a descendant from enslaved Africans here have never actually had a chance yet. Because let's call what this Barack Obama did. No, he's considered, he was born here, but his father is, Kenyan, and he was half white. I'm talking about someone who was born here, came through the transatlantic slave trade. We haven't had that yet. Now, we had a black first lady. We have that, but we haven't had one of us to run yet. And the Democrats, you notice how they don't give a whole lot of opportunity, but that's fine. You don't have to. My thing is the Democrats are being exposed every which way and what they do to black people. Lanisha don't need to spend a day in nobody's jail because this is completely wrong. And as the lawyers say, this is unconstitutional. Now, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this particular story. But it's time to take them to task, all of them, these Democrats in these states, because a lot of times they pull out slick things. They're dirty. And all the things they're pulling right now is going to backfire on them. What is going on right now in that house? I'm telling you, I see the writings on the wall.